Well, guys, I have bad news, but even giving it a couple extra weeks, it seems we missed our goal of 1 million subscribers by the end of the year by 999,513. So this close. Anyway, maybe by the end of this year. So please subscribe. Hello, good evening. Dad Texan here, and welcome back to Texplained, the series where I break down big, complicated topics into something understandable without turning it into a college lecture or Twitter fight. Now, today's topic is one that immediately makes people tense the second you bring it up. You already know the comments are coming. You already know that half the audience is bracing for impact. Today, we're talking about the Second Amendment. Let me clear something up front. This is not a rah-rah video. It's not a hit piece. This is about history, intent, modern interpretation, and why one sentence still causes arguments over 230 years later. Now, personally, I lean more with a shall not be infringed crowd, but not blindly, not absolutely, and not without acknowledging reality. I also think one of the biggest problems in this entire debate is how badly people misunderstand guns, how they work, what they do, and why they exist at all. So let's slow this down, start from the beginning, and explain it. To understand the Second Amendment, you have to understand who wrote it and what they had just lived through. The Founding Fathers weren't armchair philosophers. They were revolutionaries. Many of them had just finished fighting a war against the most powerful empire on the earth at the time, Great Britain. And here's the part people forget. The American Revolution wasn't fought by a massive standing army at first. It was fought by armed civilians. Farmers, tradesmen, shop owners, regular people who already owned firearms because guns were tools of daily life, for hunting, protection, and survival. Now, under British rule, one of the Crown's tactics was disarmament. British authorities attempted to seize colonial weapons and powder supplies. Lexington and Concord, the opening shots of the Revolutionary War were triggered by gun confiscation efforts. So when the founders talked about tyranny, they weren't speculating, they were remembering. That's the mindset that produced the Bill of Rights. Here's a full text because context matters. A well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms, shall not be infringed. This sentence has been argued over more than almost any other line in American law. So let's break it down the way it was understood at the time. Well-regulated. In the 18th century, well-regulated did not mean heavily restricted. It meant functional, trained, and effective. A well-regulated clock kept good time. A well-regulated militia was prepared, armed, and capable. Militia. The militia is not the National Guard. It was the people. Able-bodied citizens who could be called upon to defend their community, state, or country.
Reverend?
The shepherd must tend his flock. And at times, fight off the wolves.
The right of the people. This phrase matters. It appears elsewhere in the Bill of Rights, the First Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, and it also refers to individual rights, not government-controlled privileges. And finally, shall not be infringed. These four words are at the core of the debate. Some say this is absolute, others not so much. That's not ambiguous language, that's strong language, but understanding it requires understanding why it was written. This is where the Second Amendment stops being about guns and starts being about power. The founders feared centralized authority. They feared standing armies loyal to the state instead of the people. They feared a government that could act without restraint. The Second Amendment exists because the founders believed that ultimate authority rests with the people, not the government. An armed populace wasn't meant to overthrow the government. It was meant to deter the government from overstepping in the first place. Power behaves differently when it knows there's a limit. The Second Amendment doesn't exist in a vacuum. It wasn't written just to protect firearms. It was written to protect everything else that comes before it. Speech, religion, assembly, due process. Those rights only exist as long as there's a real limit on how much power the state can exert over its citizens. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Rights don't disappear all at once. They erode slowly, usually in the name of safety. Speech becomes harmful speech, assembly becomes public disorder, due process becomes inconvenient. You don't have to look far to see how that happens. Take the United Kingdom. The UK has some of the strictest gun laws in the Western world. Most citizens are effectively disarmed. Firearm ownership is rare and tightly controlled. Recently, a British man traveled to the United States, illegally visited a gun range, and posted photos of himself shooting firearms, something that is completely legal here. When he returned home, he was arrested. Not for violence, not for threats, but for posting pictures online. Authorities label the images concerning. And that's the point. When the state holds a monopoly on force, the definition of dangerous expands and the threshold for punishment drops. The Second Amendment exists not because Americans want violence, but because the founders understood human nature. Governments don't announce tyranny. They justify it. They normalize it. They slide into it.
Hey, how you doing?
An armed public doesn't mean rebellion. It means the government never forgets its authority is conditional, not absolute. Today, the debate splits into roughly two camps. Camp 1 shall not be infringed. This camp takes the Second Amendment literally and historically. To them, it's not about hunting or sport. It's about preserving the balance of power between people and the state. Their argument is that once the government decides what level of force citizens are allowed to have, the right loses its meaning. History backs this fear up. Disarmament often comes before oppression, not after. They also point to decades of incremental gun laws that were sold as reasonable but never final, reinforcing the belief that compromise only leads to more restrictions. The strongest criticism of this camp is that it can come across as inflexible, sometimes dismissing legitimate safety concerns or refusing to engage with the realities of modern society, even when those concerns aren't rooted in bad faith. They argue that once you allow infringement, it never stops. Camp 2, reasonable limits or common sense laws. This group generally supports gun ownership but believes it should be limited to clear purposes like self-defense, hunting, or sport. Their focus is harm reduction, reducing accidents, suicides, and mass violence through licensing, training, or restrictions they see as common sense. They tend to trust modern institutions, courts, and democratic systems to prevent tyranny, making armed resistance feel unnecessary or outdated to them. The problem with this view is that it often relies on government competence. And good intentions, something history doesn't always support. Many proposed laws are driven by fear or misunderstanding on how firearms actually work, leading to cosmetic bans and policies that affect law-abiding owners more than criminals, while slowly redefining what reasonable ownership even means. They often argue from fear, mass shootings, crime, and public safety. Here's the problem. Both sides are talking past each other, and a big reason for that is misinformation. A massive portion of gun policy debate is driven by people who fundamentally do not understand firearms. You'll hear things like fully automatic weapons are everywhere. AR-15s are designed to kill as many people as possible. High-capacity magazines turn people into mass shooters. Most of this is either exaggerated or outright false. Modern gun laws are often written by people who can't explain the difference between semi-automatic and automatic, or the difference between a magazine and a clip, and confuse cosmetic features with lethality. Fear is a powerful motivator, especially when paired with ignorance.
A 9mm bullet blows the lung out of the body. So the idea of these high-caliber weapons is...
Education matters. Gun safety education, mechanical understanding, and legal literacy. If people actually understood firearms, a lot of proposed laws would look very different. Now I want to take a quick detour into the modern political climate, because this is where a lot of Second Amendment conversations get overheated and frankly disconnected from reality. Right now, depending on which side of the internet you're on, you'll hear the current administration described as everything from authoritarian to a regime to literal tyranny. And look, I'm not here to defend politicians. I don't trust them as far as I can throw them. But we need to be careful with our words, because actual tyranny isn't something you get to loudly accuse your government of on social media without consequences. Real tyranny doesn't allow open criticism of leadership. Protest permits, satire, podcasts, memes, or entire cable networks built around calling the president an idiot 24/7. The fact that people can openly call the government corrupt, authoritarian, illegitimate, or incompetent on national television, online, in print, without disappearing in the middle of the night is itself evidence that we are not living under true tyranny. That doesn't mean everything is fine. It doesn't mean power can't be abused. It doesn't mean vigilance isn't necessary. But it does mean we should respect the difference between political dissatisfaction and actual oppression. History gives us plenty of examples of what real tyranny looks like. Speech is monitored, dissent criminalized, opposition jailed, weapons confiscated, media controlled, fear enforced. And once those things happen, you don't get to debate whether it's tyranny because the debate itself no longer exists. Just ask any Cuban or Venezuelan. This matters because we casually label every administration we dislike as authoritarian. We dilute the meaning of the word and weaken the very warning signs we are supposed to watch for. The Second Amendment isn't about reacting to every election result you don't like. It's about preserving a long-term balance of power so no administration, left or right, ever gets the idea that resistance is impossible. And ironically, the loudest proof that we are not under tyranny is the freedom people have to say that we are. That freedom doesn't come from trust in politicians. It comes from constitutional limits, layered protections that work together. The First Amendment lets you speak. The Second ensures that speech can never be silenced solely by force. Neither is a guarantee. Both require responsibility, and both lose meaning if we stop understanding what they were actually built to prevent. Now, as I said earlier in the video, I lean closer to the shall not be infringed side because history shows that rights once given up are rarely returned. That said, I'm not blind. I support training, I support responsibility and accountability. But I don't believe ignorance should be the basis for legislation, and I don't believe law-abiding citizens should lose rights because criminals who already ignore laws. I mean, most shootings happen in gun-free zones. The Second Amendment isn't about hunting. It's not about hobbies. It's about preserving a balance of power. So there you have it, the origin, purpose, debate, modern reality of the Second Amendment. You don't have to agree with me. You don't have to own a gun. You don't even have to like guns. But you should understand why the right exists and why so many Americans defend it so fiercely. Because once the right is gone, it doesn't come back quietly. If you enjoyed this breakdown, hit like, subscribe, and drop a comment on what topic you want me to Texplain next. This has been Dead Texan. And remember, you don't have to agree with me. Just don't be a puto in the comments. And I'll see you in the next one.